The UFC is actively pursuing a deal with Netflix. At least that's the word on the street as of now. Apparently, there is some big trouble in paradise between the UFC and ESPN. The UFC is mad at ESPN. ESPN is mad at the UFC. No one's happy in this relationship. So let's talk about a few of those reasons as to what is making this relationship so miserable. Pay-per-view numbers are way down. They're in the toilet. Apparently they're horrible. I don't know exactly to what extent. Maybe it's being exaggerated to a certain degree, but I do think that it's pretty apparent that the pay-per-view model is just not working for the UFC right now. And ESPN is not happy about that because they're apparently a lot lower than they anticipated coming into this year. I'm seeing that the biggest reason for the UFC is that the technology is not there for ESPN, and it really should be considering how big of a company they are. And the ESPN makes sense. Their issue is just the extremely low pay-per-view buys. Now, is this something that can be fixed? Right now, I don't think so. Aside from what the UFC as a product is bringing to the table, I think that the pay-per-view format is coming to an end. I think that the technology for the average person, the ability to get illegal streams is just way too easy, especially when you consider how outrageously priced the UFC pay-per-views are. I don't think for the average person there is any reason to not illegally stream these fights, especially if somebody only wants to see the main event and maybe one other fight. They're not going to go spend like $80 to watch fights that they don't want to see. The dedicated fans, the fans who are really into all the fights, maybe if they have the money, but for the average viewer, they want to see 1-2 fights, especially on these recent cards. And it's just at everyone's fingertips to get this fight for free. Why would you not do that? And the UFC has tried to strike down these illegal sites. They say it's coming to an end. I don't think it'll ever come to an end. It's gone too far. And the whole model just needs to change. And I think the UFC is starting to understand that. And that is why they are going to give it their best shot to make a deal with Netflix when their contract comes to an end with ESPN. Because Netflix, we saw the numbers that it did with Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, even though that was kind of a mess. We saw what they were able to do, the eyes they were able to bring in. And I think the amount of eyes that the UFC could gain from going to Netflix will be insane. I think this would be a great idea. I think it would increase viewership by record amounts. And I think it's the best play here by the UFC. And I think they know that. Shout out ACD MMA for the tweet. Let's read some of the comments, see what the people are saying under here about all this information coming to fruition. Of course, pay-per-view sales are going to be down when people have the choice between watching a free stream or paying $80 for 5 fights. Exactly correct. What I was thinking. I think this is an opinion shared by most fans of the UFC, MMA in general. They can't reason in their head. They can't justify the purchase for just those few fights that they want to watch. Sorry, but nobody's paying $90 for that Duplessis Strickland pay-per-view. Better your product, rid of the pay-per-view model, and introduce a subscription-based model that includes everything in your library. Live shows for $30 or so a month. That I think is also a good idea. The subscription-based model, if the price is not ridiculous, I would sign up for that, and I think a lot of other people would. The pay-per-view model, rest in peace, it's coming to an end, and I think it needs to. Pay-per-view sales are down because you could watch them for free instead. Pretty much the same points that I'm talking about here. And I think it only goes to show the point of how all of the community is feeling about the state of the UFC right now. So I personally hope that this deal gets done. I want to see it go through. I think it'd be huge. I think it'd really mix things up. I think it'd be like a breath of fresh air. I think it would bring in a lot of new fans, energize old fans, and I think it could really make a big difference for the UFC. Hopefully that goes through. As far as the UFC and their technology complaints, though, Netflix still does have a lot to figure out, but I'm sure they will because this seems to be something they want to pursue further. So I hope it gets done. What do you guys think? What should the UFC do? Would you like to see this deal go down? Let me know. Subscribe for more combat sports news and coverage. We're almost to our goal of 500 subscribers. The support is much appreciated. I'll see you next time. Peace.